video will demonstrate how to set up the analog inputs on an Aeroforce interceptor gauge. In a minute I'll go over the actual physical connections in the back of the gauge, but first I'll show you how to set up the conversions in the gauge programming to convert the voltage out of the sensor to a usable value, called the engineering units, meaning pressure units or temperature, or in this example we'll pretend to set up an air-fuel wideband kit. So we'll set it up for air-fuel ratio. So right now we are in normal scan mode, and we're going to set up analog 2. So we're going to the menu, and we're going to scroll down until we see analog 2. There's 2 analog inputs. We'll assume that we hooked the wires up to analog 2. So we've highlighted it, we'll hit the right button. Now we're in this screen where we need to enter the slope. These values are given to you in the instructions with any of our kits, whether they're pressure, temperature, wideband. If you bought somebody else's sensor, you should be able to get this information from them. These are the slope and intercept values. These are the values that you use to convert voltage to units. The slope value is basically what you multiply the voltage by, and in this case for our wideband kit we want to multiply it by 2 as the instructions state. So we've entered 2. We're going to get out of this screen, go to the next screen. Intercept is also known as the offset, the zero offset, because 0 volts does not always equal 0 psi or 0 degrees or a 0 AF ratio. In our case, at 0 volts, that's equivalent to 10 air-fuel ratio. So we're going to enter 10 here. We hit the left button to scroll to the digits to the right. The left button is what changes the value. The right button scrolls to the next digit. And now we're at the final screen where we need to choose what we want to call this analog input. Now it's going to be air-fuel ratio, so we're going to find that one in the list. There should be one for every application. We're going to select it with the right button, and you see that asterisk there. Okay, so that tells us it's been selected. We'll hit both buttons to get out. We're back at the first screen of the main menu, and we're going to select scan to go back to what you just saw earlier. And now as you see, analog 2 is now called AF ratio, and it's reading 10. There's nothing hooked up to that wire, so 0 volts is coming in, and as you saw, 0 volts is equivalent to 10 AF ratio based on the slope and intercept values we entered. So if this is hooked up, and I have one over here next to this gauge, in this case AF ratio is hooked up and it's reading 14.9. Yeah, I give it some gas, it's going to change a little bit, it's fluctuate, but you get the idea of how to set these up now. Now, as far as the hardware goes, when you look at the back of a gauge, you'll see these connectors, and I'm going to put this down here. This top connector, this top connector here is where the 3-wire harness goes that comes with the gauge, and we just plug in. Okay. Now the red wire is used only for external power for the gauge, 12-volt power for the gauge. It has nothing to do with the analog inputs. The white and the green wires are the analog inputs. The green is analog 1 and the white is analog 2. So in our case, we're using analog 2. We would hook up our wideband output to this white wire. It's only a 1-wire connection. The ground of the gauge comes from the OBD2 port through this other OBD2 connector. So it's not a two-wire connection, it's just one, and that applies to all our sensors. The sensor itself is grounded when you power it, so as you see, it's just a one-wire connection, and that's about it. Everything else is everything needed I've just explained in the video. It's also described in detail in the instructions, but I thought maybe if you saw it visually in a video, maybe it would make it a little easier to understand. Okay, thanks for watching.